Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pet Care Innovation Prize, our startup series of webinars. My name is Dan Roos. I'm with the Pet Care Innovation Prize, which is a competition powered by Nestle Purina to identify and help grow early stage pet care companies. Joining us today as a presenter is John Gibbons, who is an expert in the pet care business with a couple of decades of experience, and he's going to tell us about what the reality is of the pet care industry, kind of what the data is behind it, and what that looks like for an entrepreneur. John, welcome.
Thanks, Dan. I'm glad to be here.
That's great. Before we get you started, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. We will be posting your presentation afterwards on the petcareinnovationprize.com website, as well. We'll be posting both a video of it as well as your slides. So you're going to be walking us through kind of how the industry has changed over time, what it looks like, where people buy for their pets, and how people kind of go to market as pet care entrepreneurs. If you have any questions, John's available for questions when he finishes the formal part of his presentation. Feel free to type them in, or if you feel like you've got a longer question than that, you can. There's a way that you can raise your hand to actually ask a question by audio on your panel. But John, go ahead and let's get started. To get started, I guess I should say, your background is that you have a science background, but you've been in consumer products for quite some time, especially, and you've spent over 25 years in the pet industry, and you do a lot of research on various trade shows and in the various categories in the business to kind of help make sense of it. And that's what you're going to base our talk on today, correct?
That's definitely it. So,
all right. Yes. Well, without further ado, take it away.
Okay. It's as you'll see today, and you are probably already aware, it's a spectacular industry, but very complex and growing both in size and complexity. We're going to talk about reality today, which matters a lot if you want to get involved in the industry. Specifically, how big it is. Here's a spoiler alert: $68 billion, which is more than American consumers spent on alcohol, both at home and away. That usually gets people. How much it has grown through the years. What are the factors behind this growth? Where are the consumers spending their money? What's behind today's consumer buying behavior? How do we reach today's consumers? And I'm not talking about advertising and social media. I'm talking about how do you get your products in front of the consumer so they can buy? What's your competition? How many companies are involved in the industry? And final question is, should you get involved? If the answer is yes, what are the next steps? So let's get started with the first slide. And this slide shows the retail spending from 1960 up to 2015. All this data comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, their annual consumer expenditure survey. And every time I look at this, it's just totally spectacular. And we have to put it a little bit into perspective in the fact that there are twice as many households now as there were in 1960, and that the dollar was worth 8 times as much. But taking all that into consideration, America is still spending 8 times as much on their pets now as they did in 1960. And to give you an idea of how spectacular this growth has been, Pet spending has gone up 76% faster than income and 96% faster than our total household spending, basically double. There are a lot of factors involved in this growth, new products, new companies, all that type of thing. But there are three overriding things we should consider. First place, in 1960, only 40% of US households had a pet. In 2015, that had grown to over 65%. To put that into perspective, that's twice as many people or twice as many households have a pet as have children under 18. We've also radically changed our view. Back in 1960, we were pet owners. In 2015, we are firmly entrenched pet parents, and pets have become an integral part of our families. And the final factor is that the companies involved and people have focused on fulfilling and creating the wants and needs, which are ever growing, of these pet parents.
John, I want to interrupt you here a second. As I look at this chart, this kind of, I believe you told me that the idea of calling people pet parents, that kind of dates back to about 2000. Is that right?
Well, the first time I ever heard it was mid to late 1990s.
Yeah.
And that's when I first heard the term. And I think it was starting to identify this change. And you can see when the change came into effect. Just look at the sales after 2000.
Right.
It went up. That's generally determined as the time of the humanization of our pets. And there were radical changes in, as you can see, which resulted in a lot more dollars.
So the other thing I notice when I look at this chart is it looks like growth has flattened off, but part of that is because did we kind of run through the growth that resulted and it's kind of gotten back to its historical growth is what it kind of looks like?
Well, as you'll see today, that slacking off a little bit, a lot of that has to do with the Great Recession, which changed the way American consumers looked at buying, their behavior in general. And we'll talk about that later in the presentation. So.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, take it away. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh. All right. Questions are great. We encourage any of you out there to ask questions. Let's look at where they're spending their bucks. And the first thing you see is in this pie chart is a lot of different people want a piece of the pie. And what we're looking at here comes from the economic census, which is run by the Census Bureau and is an extremely accurate survey on spending in the United States. The largest share is in pet stores, as you can see, with over 30%, followed by number 2, which is warehouse clubs and supercenters. They've become a way of life. And number 3 is grocery. Interestingly enough, back in 1992, grocery was far and away number 1, and it had almost 40% of all the pet product sales. By the way, by pet products, I mean pets, pet food, and pet supplies. Okay. And number 4 is the one that's on everyone's mind. It's non-store retailers. That would include mostly the internet, but also mail order and as seen on TV. So, and this data is a couple years old, so it shows around 9% or so sales. That is growing daily. It's probably in excess of 12, if not higher, interesting note, that particular channel is now the second largest consumer retail channel in America, only behind grocery stores and supermarkets. So,
John, do you, this is fairly late news, but I mean, fairly recent news, but with Amazon's bid to acquire Whole Foods, do you see, do you have any thoughts happened in the last few days? Do you see that that has any impact in the pet care industry right away, or is that something to kind of wait and see what that means?
well, it's going to, the pet care industry, you can see it's widespread. So anything that has a major impact on retail in America will affect the pet care industry. As I said, that non-store passed to supercenters clubs back in March of 2016 for the second biggest retail channel. And that left them only grocery stores to beat. I projected out in one of my posts that they would pass grocery stores by 2020 if they kept up their current rate. Well, that was before they have turned full focus onto fresh grocery and gaining that share of business. With the acquisition of Whole Foods, that shows Amazon dedication to that. They're going to accelerate that rate, and they are probably going to become the single biggest channel by 2019. And as the biggest channel, that's certainly going to impact pet food, because pet food is 3% of all the sales of any outlets stocking pet food and supply, excuse me. So.
Mm. Hey, John, can we just clarify? A question popped up. This data that you're showing is from 2015, is that correct?
No, this data comes from the economic census. The only place you can really get that detailed data. That's run by the Census Bureau. Unfortunately, it only is done every 5 years. It takes some, I mean, this is mining, manufacturing, services, everything.
Mm-hmm.
This data was published late in 2014. They're running a new economic census even as we speak, but I won't have access to the data until late 2019. So,
Mm-hmm.
but
So this
it
is
pretty
so
much
this is
reinforces the other what other people are saying or other research. Go ahead.
great. Thanks.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now we've seen where they're spending money. Oh, one point here to give you an idea. There are over 200,000 retail stores plus the internet selling pet products all the time. And 25.9 million U.S. households buy pet products every week, 52 weeks a year. So it's important. Okay,
So
let's
so
look a little.
so does this actually? Am I right here that dollar stores actually rival vet clinics for sales for pet parents? Is that?
Oh yeah,
I mean, so
dollar
dollar stores.
stores. Uh, that's I'm an old guy, 69 years old, but that's their growth has been amazing to me. A couple of years ago, they passed the traditional big department stores in share of the U.S. retail sales. People are, as you'll see, are looking for value, and they provide it in a easy way to buy.
Wow. So they're easy to shop and lots of value. Okay.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about those consumers. Okay,
Sure.
I'm trying to go to the next slide. U.S. consumers, and maybe consumers everywhere, are driven by three major factors. Value, and value is not just price, but is price plus quality. Okay, consumers are getting smarter. Convenience. It's a hectic world we live in. Anything that makes pet parenting or anything easier has a great appeal. And selection, we're Americans. We want what we want, and we want a choice, and we want to find products that very closely fit our particular wants and needs. So it's interesting. You can look at this. Let's look at you can look at this in terms of the internet, because this applies not only to products but where they shop. So if we look at the internet with no brick and mortar stores except for possibly Whole Foods, they have a lower overhead. So there's always going to be a good price on the internet. Convenient. You don't have to leave your couch to order, and you can have it delivered to your door or pick it up locally. And selection. I'll never forget a conversation I had with a major retail chain one time. They have a fabulous array of pet products, but I told them, I said, I hate to tell you this, but you can't build a store as big as the internet. So you see, there's absolute concrete reasons for that growth of the internet. So,
What do you see that a question was asked? Do you see that when we think about value and convenience and selection, but you also show quality in here. So how does quality kind of fit into that? Is quality subjective based on the purchase location, or talk a little bit about how that works?
Well, if you don't mind, let's jump down to that second line. What are the factors affecting buying? Because the world has changed. I can't tell you how the consumer in America has changed since the Great Recession. There are recent studies, and this has come from a major study by Blackhawk and Gibbons Solutions on the current American consumer and their buying decisions. Price now is 75% of the decision. And you see quality, which those two added together, you see where the value comes into play. But we have made the quality of products so much better that people, and you see it in the third line where brand has dropped off. We're now come to understand that private label products, and you don't have to be a major brand to get good quality. And so quality is still important, but as quality has become more widespread in the product offerings, price comes down to the factor. Okay.
So there's a lot of equivalency. There's a lot of equivalency between store brands and name brands and all of that.
Here's the scoop. Generic foods started this whole process back in the late 70s and 80s, and I don't know if you were old enough to remember, there was an aisle of generic foods of all kinds, peas, whatever. Then they got smart and decided that they need to upgrade the quality of the product, and it would make sense to merchandise the private label brand right next to the branded merchandise. And so we've been teaching this lesson for since the 80s, and the consumers really got it after the Great Recession. Okay, and many of these private label brands are made in the same factories. And the consumer has gotten smart, and as we'll see in the next thing, they check on the internet. They check in store. They read the labels. They are smart, and they're tougher to fool than they once were. You can see where store is only 20%, 6%, but once again, they're for that value, convenience, and selection. So you can see how that the dollar stores have grown because they offer a great value, and it's an easy in and out. Okay.
So when you say that 26% of store, is that related to like the in-store experience, the store brand, how easy it is to shop? What is included in that 26%?
Well, 26% implies store loyalty.
Store
And you
loyalty.
could see the number one loyalty in today's consumer is price, followed by quality. Okay,
Hmm.
so that value is up there. Where they get that, that is not as fixed as it once was. In the 80s, 90s, I grew up with brand both in store name and product being critical. There was so much advertising and brand loyalty that as the quality of the products universally have improved, that has dropped down in the consumer's mind. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, this next chart shows where consumers go to check pricing and products. And you can see this is 10 different categories. And you can see that the internet is number one, their number one choice in 8 of the 10. But you'll notice the difference in pet products. Pet products and fresh groceries, the number one place that people go to check on pricing and product, the search for products is in store. Now, I think that makes a lot of sense for fresh groceries. You want to squeeze an avocado and make sure you have the best looking steaks for your barbecue. But it also reinforces something in the difference in pet products is our pets are very personal and we want to touch and feel and read about the products in person. And so we do that in store. Now,
You know,
that's when you're looking. You
so
have to
somebody,
remember that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, somebody pointed out to me that pet retail is also one of the few places where you know that it's okay to bring your pet. You know, if you think about it as a pet parent, do you know how much of an impact the ability to bring the pet into the store is? I mean, obviously, you're not asking the pet their opinion on something before you make a purchase, but um, how much do you think that's related to having the pet with them? Is there any research into that, or is that kind of conjecture?
Well, it's having the pet, but it's also where else are you going to go to have a conversation with a live person in front of you looking at your pet, about your pet. You can't go there and go to the grocery store and talk to anybody in that store about the wants and needs of you and your pet. Uh, you can see that reflected in their buying behavior because pet stores are the number one place to buy pet products. With all those different choices, still a huge number of people want that personal connection and to be, well, I've thought about it. If you've got, you want to buy a new harness for your pet, you can't try it on the internet. You can in a pet store. Okay, so it can make a big difference. The one thing to realize, though, is that once a consumer has established the exact product they want to buy, okay, and they're no longer looking in that particular category, then their behavior is going to revert back to, okay, I know what I want, where can I get the best price?
Hmm.
So they may go shop on the internet or different stores that have the exact same product at a better price.
So to put in a little bit of a plug for what you were saying earlier, and a plug for our friends at Pet Age that are helping us do this webinar series and promote it. But so the pet industry still, despite all of the all products kind of moving to different channels and everything, the pet industry and then the pet retail industry still has a lot of value to pet care entrepreneurs. It's not like Target or Walmart are going to replace it anytime soon.
Absolutely. Well, you see that it's there in the volume. It's also there. The importance of independence is very, as we get into talking about the retail channels, in our next slide, we'll talk about the difference on how to get the products in front of people. So
Great.
if you don't
Keep
mind,
going.
we'll go ahead.
Keep
Okay.
going. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to switch back to, I can get the slide to come up. Oops. Slide skip to the end. There we go. Okay, this is another view of all those different retail channels, and major point was to list all these, but also to show that the consumer and manufacturers have different view. Let's take an example of pet stores. Consumer sees a pet store. Now, it may be a chain, it may be a superstore. Their number one concern is, do they have the product that I want? Okay, from the manufacturer's side, they may decide to do business in pet stores. Well, there are different ways to get that product into the store, and it's going to vary by the individual store. You could ship it, sell it direct to an independent. You may sell it to a pet distributor who supplies independents and some chains, or it could go to a chain warehouse. And there are different ways in all these different channels to get the product in front of the consumer. I just wanted to give you that overview. Let's look more specifically at those patterns.
So I just want to point out to everybody that in the slides that we'll be posting later today, that's actually much more readable. So that if you were trying to figure out what you should be doing with your own business, wait until you can see the slides and print it out.
Well, this one gets more to the point. When I came into the industry, there was really one choice. You ship to a warehouse. That was either a chain store warehouse or that was a distributor's warehouse, and that could be pet or grocery or whatever. Nowadays, you have the good news is you have a lot more options. The bad news is, as manufacturer, you got to be prepared for a lot more options. The first thing you can do is now, for the first time with websites and the internet, you can sell direct to the consumer very easily. Okay, you can also ship and sell direct to independent retailers. This matters a lot, especially for startups, because a lot of time those folks are looking for ways to differentiate themselves from everybody else and the chains, and new products are a real good way to do that. So they may be more amenable in listening to you. Now, once you get past this, you get into the major leagues, and that's the red box there. Now, you could ship to a distributor, and then he ships to, and that could be pet distributor or grocery or whatever. He ships to independent co-op store, and they sell to the consumer. Now, for pet distributors, there's also another option that has come up a lot recently, in which the pet distributors may sell your product, but have you drop ship it to the independent. Now, next choice is going to the big chains, and this could be any retail channel. You could ship directly to their warehouse, or especially in the pet store chains, they may ask you to ship directly to their stores. And another option which has come up, many of those large retail chains have internet sites, and there's also obviously all the internet retailers. Now, generally you ship to a fulfillment center or warehouse and they ship to the consumer. But now, recently it's come up where some of these folks are asking the the manufacturer to fulfill the orders directly to the consumer. So that's another complicated thing. You have to be prepared to ship directly to people's houses. Then the other big dotted line, which also applies to these big people, is the larger folks may, especially with a lot of manufacturing being done overseas, may ask, in trying to get a better price, to pick it up at your factory which could be in China or wherever, at a foreign port, or in some cases, a port of entry. So
So a
we've
lot of our,
gone in. Pardon?
John, a lot of our folks are probably considering food and treats as their product. How much of, is food and treat have a specific way that it seems to work more in the U.S., or is it really this many options for it as well?
Well, the options are all there. It's going to matter. The big thing that happened, and it happened after the 2007 melamine problem, in which people became even more concerned about their pet food, not just nutritional value, but its safety. As we speak, the last time I checked a month or two ago, 97% of pet foods are sold in the USA are made in the USA. And there's even a very strong trend to make sure that all the ingredients came from the USA. So that's with the people here. Made in the USA for food products is a critical need right now.
And actually, we saw from some of our companies that were in last year's Pet Care Innovation Prize, that's actually a differentiator for export purposes, even back to Asia, back to some of those countries. That being made in USA of US ingredients was a differentiator for them.
Well, we don't have, if you can see by a ton of voluntary recall, we need a little bit better policing or in our manufacturing process and stuff like that. But these are all caught and voluntary, and people have a lot of confidence in pet food because we're looking so closely at it in Made in the USA. So exp is a real possibility.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. Let's take a look then. Well, you've seen this huge market, and it is growing at a fantastic rate. Lots of opportunities, but guess what? Other people have thought of this. There's some competition out there. I estimate there's easily over 2,000 manufacturers involved in the pet business. And in your particular category, whatever that might be, it could be 100, 200 more. At the last Global Pet Expo, there were 343 booths selling dog and or cat treats. So every year, as we're seeing now, there's a certain amount of mergers and consolidations which cut down the numbers slightly, but they also add strength to those existing companies. But hundreds of new companies come into the battle every year, but also, unfortunately, hundreds of companies fade and fall by the wayside. So,
John, can I advance
we're going
this
to
to your
try and
next
take
slide for you?
Yeah, okay. We're
There you
going
go.
to take a snapshot of that, and the way we're going to do that is to look at the two major trade shows. Global Pet Expo, which just happened in March, which is put on by the American Pet Products Association and Pet Industry Distributors Association, and Super Zoo, which is coming up in July, which we're going to look at last year's Super Zoo, which is put on by the World Pet Association. And we're going to look at the exhibitors. As you can see, there are almost 1,200 exhibitors at both shows. The most popular booth size is 10 by 10 or less in both shows. So, and that's those booths, many of those are people new to the industry. There's a slight difference in the shows. There's a higher focus at Super Zoo on independent pet stores as the attendees, and Global, which started the industry back 60th show, has a higher number of international exhibitors and a more global impact. I do an analysis of these shows and develop a solution to help attendees find what they're looking for. And so I look at the product categories of every offering, of every exhibitor, and also at the different exhibitors. And the amazing thing to me, between those two shows, only 600 exhibitors did both shows. Okay, that means that there are over 1,100 exhibitors who only did one of the two shows, and that the total combined companies to these shows is over 1,700. That's a lot. Okay, and more importantly to folks in this audience, the turnover. I've noticed that I've been checking this back to 2013. Every year, over 25% of the exhibitors at each show don't return.
Really?
To that show next year. Are by 500 new exhibitors as both shows continue to grow in both size and number.
John, you at least on my end, you cut out for just a moment. So you said 25% of the exhibitors don't show the return the following year. Do you know if those companies like have ceased to exist? They don't longer feel the need to exhibit. Do you have any sense of that, or is that hard to track?
That's hard to track. Some of this is probably good news. They were acquired by your company because they loved what they saw. They could merge together. Most of it is not real positive news. They may not necessarily have gone out of business, but they've just decided that this is not the way they're going to try to market their product. So
yeah, we have one company we're familiar. We have one company that we're familiar with that they actually took 2 years off from global. That they showed up at global and they took 2 years off to really try to sell through to the channels that they had, and build their capacity. That they didn't want to be, they didn't want to be too diluted in trying to connect with too many people before this. They took 2 years off before they came back. So it could be a sign of having some discipline and strength, but it could also be that the company it just was not viable.
Yeah, well, as we'll see later, you got to put together a hell of a business plan, and this may be putting your foot in the water, a trial, and that may not necessarily work out, or you see some adjustments you need to make and you need some time to do that. So like I said, it may not be all totally bad news, but that's the reason you have to get your plan together at the beginning. You can see in this final part of this slide that dogs and cats rule. 84% of exhibitors selling dog products, 50% of exhibitors selling cat products. By the way, cat is growing strongly. This is the first year it's broken the 50% barrier. Treats are number one, toys number two, so fun is still important. One of the huge growing sectors is meds and treatments and supplements. There's been a inflation in the veterinary market. It's gone up, the prices have gone up 46% faster than human medical care, and that's resulted in a lot of consumers doing everything they can to self-medicate their pets. There's also a point of new products when we're talking about these trade shows. Each one of these has a new product showcase, which it's a good way to show your product, especially with 1,200 booths. People don't have a lot of time at all those booths, but they do. Everybody who attends basically goes to the new product showcase, and it's usually around 1,000 new items in the new product showcase for these shows, but up to 2,000 more new items are only shown in exhibitor booths. So that's a huge number of items. So do we still need?
Yeah. How much of that is new items, as in just as in new packaging or new trade dress, or are they, or just new variants on something that's already out there, or is how much of it do you think is really truly new and unique?
Well, you've hit on a one of my personal feelings is that so much of this is just recycling, or they decided to rebrand something or something like that. From the trends that I'm seeing, people, and there's been a slight drop in the fashion market. People are looking for function over fashion. They're looking for products that do things better. So,
Hmm.
to paraphrase the line from Field of Dreams, if you make it better, they will buy. Okay?
Hmm.
So, and the need for new products is there. Go to any pet store, big pet store, look at any big section, dog toys. They got 20 feet, 30 feet, 50 feet. Um, I've been in the dog toy business for a lot of years, and dog toys don't sell the same. There are a lot of great sellers, a lot of average sellers, but every set you look at, 25% of those items in the bottom 25% of sales and profit and are primed to be replaced. And even the government shows the need in the pet supplies sector. Um, there's been a 5% deflation in the average price of pet supplies since 2009. Right now, the average price of pet supplies is equal to what it was in 2007. And that inflation is caused by commoditization by whole categories, like dog toys, like bowls, like collars and leads. And what the only cure for that is innovation.
Hmm.
So just about any way you want to look at it, there is a definite need for new, good, functional products.
That's great. John, before we leave this slide, a question was asked, if you're trying to meet people for international sales, what's where are the attendees for international strongest, at Global Pet or at Super Zoo? Do you have a sense?
Well, it's probably Clearfield Global Pet. There, as a matter of fact, there's over 200 international exhibitors at Global Pet, but there's also a lot of international buyers that come in there.
Hmm.
Uh, Super Zoo is growing with more international flavor, especially on international companies that are trying to get into the market. They now have over 100 international exhibitors. If you see a presence of international exhibitors, you'll see a presence of international buyers.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Well, let's take a look at what it means for you and what would be next for you. Um, in terms of startups, before you get too far down the line, and right now is the time to be asking yourself the really hard questions. Um, maybe you get somebody from outside ask them to you, but you don't want to be asking, having these questions asked by the first major person that you present your products to. Um, the biggest question that comes up, and the ultimate question you have to answer, is why my product? And more specifically, uh, why will a consumer buy my product over everything else that is out there? And you can probably talk for 30 minutes or longer about how wonderful your product is, but you also need to realize that people have a short attention span. So you need to come up with one answer in 3 bullet points, and they've got to be short, to the point. Um, Not 5 or 7, just 3 is some kind of magic number. And you remember the 3 bullet points about the why the internet. Um, Here's an example of some friends of mine. I got to thinking, especially as we looked at that huge growth in 2000, why soft-sided carriers? At that time, we were becoming pet parents and taking our pets everywhere with us. So soft-sided carriers coming into that particular market, um, here are 3 bullet points for that to give you an example. It keeps your small dog and or cat safe while you're traveling. It's more comfortable for your pet than other options. And finally, it's easier and more versatile for you, whether you're in a car, on an airplane, or just trying to get to your cat into the vet's office. So try and be really down to the point. So assuming you've got a great reason for your product, what's the next step? Well, the next step is a detailed business plan in which you're going to have goals and forecasts and budgets and all that. But you're also going to, this plan is going to have to include a lot of details. And you see the list right here. We'll go into some of those as time allows. Number 1 on the list is production and warehousing. Where are you going to have it made? How much are the runs going to be? And that production is critical in that before you can do most anything else, you're going to have to establish what is the cost of your product, because you're going to have to develop a pricing strategy. Remember those patterns of distribution? You're going to have to develop a pricing strategy that is fair and it works as your company grows. And let me give you a very specific example that comes up all the time. Say you're having a tough time with the biggest, Walmart won't give you an appointment or whatever. So you start out selling to independent pet stores, and your product starts to grow, and you're selling more and more of those stores. Well, you're going to catch the attention of pet distributors because their people are in the stores and they'll be asking, how come we don't have this product? Okay, so say you then start selling to pet distributors. Well, you have to have sold the independents at a price that allows pet distributors to take over those independents as their customers and have the pricing still be fair for everybody. It gets very complex with all those different patterns, and you need to think it through before you get started. Okay.
I want to give a couple points there, John. We're going to actually later in this webinar series in July. We're actually going to have 2 people do a session on figuring out how to do production and warehousing and be creative about that. Working with the right co-manufacturer and the co-packer. But as well, this is really critical. So it sounds to me like what you're saying is that there's a different pricing strategy depending on whether you have a distributor or not, whether you're going direct, and all of those things. That it probably is hard for an early stage pet care company to be able to manage multiple approaches at a time. Would that be accurate, or is it possible to kind of try and do all of this simultaneously? Do you need to kind of pick a channel?
Actually, it's hard as hell. I've had to do it so many times through the years that in many of these points down here, I've developed interactive spreadsheets, so it makes it easier to look at the options quickly. But I've had horrible occurrences. A company I was with once bought a smaller company, and it fell upon me to reconcile their pricing, and I looked at that and I said, do you realize you were selling these independents cheaper than you were selling this major pet chain? Now I've got to work that out. Think about it
Mhm.
in advance. It needs to be fair based on logistics and all that kind of stuff. It's a difficult process, but absolutely necessary. Okay. It
Right.
also comes up when you're positioning your product, because positioning is how you compare to other products in the category, but it also, I want you to go take a look at major stores and say, here's where my product would fit, and here's how it compares at retail, at projected retail price to the major competition. So this pricing thing is critically important. I can't emphasize it enough. It also comes into play a similar situation in promotional. Now you're going to have, when you have a budget, you're going to have a budget for off-invoice promotions, advertising, that type of stuff. Um, and it's going to need to be flexible. In some cases, as a very simple example, one of the people you deal with may need to have 10% off all orders for a limited time. Somebody else may need something for their advertising budget, so you may have to break that 10% up, since that's the total you can afford, to 5% off invoice and 5% that goes into advertising. The key is you need to know what you can afford, and you need to put together a program that is flexible. Okay.
A question was asked, what happens if you suggest retail pricing and the chain or the online retailer doesn't honor that? They either go higher or lower. How do you
Oh,
manage that?
are you talking about map pricing?
So I've heard some people talk about MAP, but the specific question came in: what happens if they're selling for more than you're suggesting?
Well, one thing, except with the possible exception with MAP, and that is very difficult to monitor and control. You
MAP
can
is
only
minimum advertised price, correct?
minimum advertised price. Yeah. I've talked to a number of people. They set that out as a suggestion, and then many times don't end up backing that up. You have to realize there's different pricing structures around America,
Mhm.
and by channel, by this, you can't control really what someone's going to sell it for. One of the things that you may see is you sell to a distributor and you may have a suggested price for them to sell it at. They may post a price that is higher than that because they like to give discounts. So they set the suggested price higher, but give 20 points off to all their best customers on a regular basis. You have to
Mhm.
realize that Americans, whether we're consumers or buyers in a business situation, like a deal. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's the reason I can't emphasize how complex this is. Plus the promotional strategy, all this pricing, it varies by channel. You have to be aware of it. Okay.
So what I've heard you say, and kind of over the all of your presentations so far, is that the industry is growing, but people, you have to be very clear about your differentiation. There's a lot out there, so you have to get to what your clear points of differentiation are, why you're better. And that's got to matter not just to you, but and to the pet parent or the pet, but also to the retailer or the channel that you're selling through. It's just got to be very clear and simple. And then I see here you've got to execute the plan. And I know that this is from our conversations that this is really important to you, that you can't just have a plan and then lock it away. You've got to be executing this plan on a daily basis, right?
Well, that's where I've seen so many startups fail. Put together an incredible amount of effort, and you can see from this, it's going to be a hell of a lot of work. Okay. But then it comes down into executing the plan. That's where I've seen so many folks fail. I mean, you've just got to have backbone, you've got to have consistent, you've got to get up every day dedicated. I had one of my old CEOs came out with a phrase that I've always hung on to, and it is so true. He said, strategy is grand, execution is crucial.
Mhm.
That pretty much sums it up.
So what does that execution look like? Is that just like, tenacity and not taking no for an answer, or does that involve, once you build kind of this plan with this model and you look at this pricing, how often do you think somebody needs to be revisiting their numbers and seeing if things are going the way they expect them to go?
Well, you have to set up a system, a reporting system, to be able to monitor this on a regular basis. And let me emphasize, it's going to be a detailed plan. Be prepared to change the plan. You never know until you get into the battle what's going to occur. Different opportunities will come up. Well, I didn't expect somebody from the mass market to contact me for a couple of years, and now they're trying to, they want to talk to me about putting my product in. Okay. Well, you need to be prepared for that, but you also need to be prepared. This isn't working. Why isn't it working? What can we do to make it more effective? So you have to listen to your potential customers and act on this. I guess I had another gentleman who used to say it's the golden rule. People who have the goal make the rules.
Mhm.
So you have to be prepared to change. Part of your channel strategy to avoid that price differentiation could be to offer a different brands or slightly different products into the mass market.
Mhm.
Okay, where it makes it tougher to compare. The consumers have gotten pretty smart about that, so that's not done as often as it once was. So,
Right.
does that
Well,
help?
I heard some of the people that have talked to you that first referred you to me for this, and I think this has been great. Now's the time when we're really ready for kind of any other questions that people have. Um, but what I like that I've heard from you is, when you even talk at the bottom of that slide, about what's your people strategy, what's your, how do you market and all of those things. I mean, your brand and your advertising and all of that stuff. But what you're really saying is there's got to be that core. Here's the three things that we are, why you're different, and everything you're doing has to be congruent with that. Nothing can be incongruent, because otherwise it just confuses the issue. If your people don't align to that, if you're how you act at a trade show, or what your trade dress looks like, or any of those things, it all has to be aligned for it to work. And then it's still, some of them don't work. So it's a battle that I guess you never really know what you don't know until after you know it, right?
That's true.
To
The
play Donald
fundamental thing
Rumsfeld.
is the fundamental thing is you've got to have a great answer to my product.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
That's the
and it's a great
fundamental
answer for everybody, right? It's not
correct.
just it's not just because it's better. Okay. Well, we have a few more minutes, John. That was wonderful. As I mentioned, if you joined us late, John's slides and a video of this presentation will be posted to petcareinnovationprize.com. I want to give a shout out, give John a chance to catch his breath here, but I want to give a shout out to PetAge. They've been a great supporter of this, and we look forward to working with them on the Pet Care Innovation Prize, which is my project, and why I'm involved in this. But this is really an exciting industry. A lot of people are very passionate. Nobody's in this industry because they don't care. They're in this because they care, primarily because they probably have their own pet, or they have their own memories of their pet and how important that is. But we run, a little shout out, the Pet Care Innovation Prize is powered by Nestle Purina Pet Care, and you can go to petcareinnovationprize.com. You certainly don't have to go, but we actually offer a cash prize, as well as business mentorship and connections and business support in order to help you grow your early stage pet care company. And we're accepting applications for this year. We have 5 finalists from last year. You can look on our website and learn more about them. But we want to help pet care entrepreneurs succeed. That's petcareinnovationprize.com. John, a question has come in. What I'm just going to read this to you directly. What ideas do you have to distribution channels take your product out of the proverbial bag first? So what do how do you kind of use, um, I'm actually not sure what this person is asking there. Does that make sense to you?
I didn't quite get that myself. I'm getting old, so.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit about some ideas that you might have for how to succeed with distribution? What have you seen recently that is either a change that seems to be going better? Are people moving away from distributors and moving more towards direct, or are people finding success with distributors in new ways? Have you seen a change?
Well, there's certainly been, I saw a big change in an industry I was in with before PET, and that was the health and beauty aids industry. And amazingly enough, that industry, there were 60,000 independent drugstores, and that's where most of health and beauty aids were sold, and they were sold through wholesale drug distributors. As you know, the health and beauty aids are sold all over America now, and I remember in one 10-year period, there went from hundreds of distributors down to only 4 in America.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think because of how strong independents are in the pet thing, I don't think we're going to see anything like that. But there's going to see more consolidation of distributors and like that. Going direct, like I said, the biggest trend, if you remember that distribution pattern, is more and more retailers and distributors want to warehouse only the better sellers. So that's where the reason they have this, ship it directly to my stores, drop ship it, all that kind of stuff. So sometimes getting them interested, they want to be interested once the product is proven. So that's the reason a lot of people have used that going to independence as a starting point. You need to get the product in front of the consumer to prove whether what you say about it is actually true. Now you can put it on a website, but as we've seen on a new pet product, people want to see it and touch it. So,
so the question was related to exactly what you were just referring to is as there's this kind of distributor consolidation and there's more products in with the distributor, and the distributor they don't want to have the cost of a product that's not proven yet. So are there good ways to, what you were kind of describing is basically get sales so that the distributor comes to you, is a great way to drive a better deal with the distributor to get better consideration and get them to push you better. Are there other ways that you've seen to get kind of favorable treatment from a distributor?
Well, more and more of them are recognizing this. So part of that thing we had on sales coverage, if you've got a strong representative group, they'll get your product and you in front of a distributor and you'll have your shot. Okay. That's easier, but what I'm saying is I've always said there are 3 different approaches in consumer products. I've used all 3. One is called trickle down, in which, say you're an established company, you have a new product, you could go to your 3 biggest customers. If one of them buys it, it'll fund the product for the rest of the whole channels and everything like that. The second is you've got a new product, you're going to offer it out to everybody at one time. I call that a shotgun approach. And the third one is you can't get the biggest people to listen to you. They're not seeing it. They would like all new products to come from their existing vendors. It's cheaper for them. You can't argue with that. And that's when you go to that trickle up. So you start going to the people who will listen to you. Many times it could be independents, smaller groups, different channels that are more interested in something new. And you trickle it up. And as you have success, people see that success. And the single biggest motivator for humans is fear of loss, much more so than anticipation of gain. So if a bigger company sees that they may be missing out on something, then they get motivated to listen.
It's wonderful. John, we are out of time. Thank you so much for all of your time today. Some of you might be aware that we had some problems last week when we tried to originally do this webinar, and John has been very gracious with his time. And by the way, that was not John's fault, that was Dan's fault. That was an operator error on Dan's part. But your slides are going to be posted. The video will be posted later on today. Everything will be at petcareinnovationprize.com. Thank you very much to PetAge. John, you have a blog and you do newsletters that people can sign up for. Where should people go to sign up for your newsletter?
That is petprofessor.com.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
If you have any other questions, go ahead and ask me them there.
Great. Thank you so much, John. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thanks for the great questions. And please join us on Wednesday, actually. We'll be back at the same time, which is noon Eastern time. And we'll be talking about product market fit with two entrepreneurs that are succeeding in the pet care industry and growing. And we'll be talking about product market fit. We also have upcoming sessions about how do you scale once you start having the strategy, what do you do with that? And finally, as we mentioned, co-manufacturing and co-packing and how to use that creatively to grow. Thank you very much from the Pet Care Innovation Prize. Thank you to PetAge, and thank you once again to John Gibbons, the GPS for pet care businesses. Take care, John, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks so much. Best of luck to everybody.